How can charitable organizations build a sustained culture of philanthropy? Jim Langley, president of Langley Innovations, says, "Speak with your donors and listen to what they have to share." In this video series, Jim shares decades of expertise and his commitment to helping institutions develop the most effective strategies to build broader and more lasting communities of support. If you're a fundraiser, tune in now. Every video with Jim is a masterclass. Hello, and welcome back to this intriguing 5-part video series, The Fundraiser's Pledge, 5 Ideals That Transform Philanthropy. I'm Susan Axelrod, your host. In the first 3 videos, we discussed the first 3 ideals: shared purpose, lifelong partnership, and full engagement with donors. Each one is a pledge the organization makes to the donor. Our guest, Jim Langley, hello, welcome back. How do you
I,
think it's been going so far?
oh, it's been great, Susan. I always enjoy conversing with you, and I do believe you bring out the best in me and you make it very easy to share ideas.
It's so important. I have been having a little bit of a thing happen with me, Jim. You and I, behind the scenes, talk about the young fundraisers of our day, and we talk about sharing wisdom that we've gained. And I mentioned to you that I've been remembering myself as a young fundraiser.
Yeah.
I was lucky, perhaps. I got to work with among the best: Bill Goldrick, Karen Osborne, Suzanne Smart, as a young fundraiser. But I've been thinking how important it would have been to have a pledge. I wanted to invite you to just, before we get into the ideal for today, I
Yeah.
wanted to invite you to just share your thought. Where did this idea come from? And do you understand what I mean? When I was a young fundraiser, 28 years old, working at a university, major gifts, major capital campaign, how it would have helped.
Well, remember how idealistic you were, and I think you still are, Susan, about why you got into the nonprofit world and why you may have looked past opportunities in the for-profit world because you were looking for meaning. Your case, you were so lucky to meet those people and to be mentored by them. But now let's think about those young practitioners who don't meet or are not brought into those kinds of environments and are getting just sort of flogged for meeting certain metrical goals, right? And all the meaning has been stripped out of it. So I think what we do here in offering this pledge can be very important to young practitioners. And I think they gravitate to both of us because they're hearing what they hope to hear in their environment. They thought, this is not why I got into this field. But when they listen to people like you and I, then they are reminded and they feel less alone and more determined to live out those ideals. Absent this kind of sharing, they can get very discouraged and isolated. So in thinking about the ideals, I was also thinking about a compact with the donors. We talk about fundraising very often as a kind of a transactional exercise, but in fact, step way back from it. And it's the way we make a social compact. It's how we, the people, decide to collaborate and give of ourselves, and we call it philanthropy. That social compact is continued to fracture over the last 30 or 40 years. It's fractured in the terms of number of participating households has dropped from 75% to about 45%. It might be even lower when the next round of data comes. We've lost tens of millions of giving households. And I think what is at stake here is this growing disconnection from the nonprofit world because people don't see themselves, their purposes, and their values being stated, and they don't see a way to live out their values by giving to and through nonprofits. So in the face of that evidence, we're encouraging more and more nonprofit leaders, good people doing good work, to step forward to that doubting group, to those people on the fence and say, before we even get close to asking you to make a pledge to us, we want to make a pledge to you. And I think that is so compelling when more people start to hear that from more nonprofit leaders. And Susan, dare we might dream and get hundreds of nonprofits to sign the pledge so that it becomes a standard of good work and people start asking, are you a signatory of the fundraiser's pledge? Oh, then we might really turn this field to a more sustainable, ethical orientation that would rebuild trust.
Jim, in this conversation with you, I'm beyond dreaming, I'm in the vision. I just want to say that one of our conversations, we talked about translation of language. You just invoked me as a young fundraiser and my ideals. And I wanted to really say that these are the 5 most important ideals of fundraising. And as such, we're tapping into the ideals for our donors as well, right? And so
Yes.
today's ideal is quite foundational, Jim, because really without of it, none of the others matter. Today, we're talking about money and what happens to it after it leaves a donor's hands. So the pledge today, the 4th ideal, we pledge transparency from the time your funds hit our books until they are applied for the purposes to which we agreed. Jim, you've spoken publicly, including being quoted in the New York Times, about what happens when donor trust is violated. We have Epstein, we have Bernie Madoff, we have other cases. And I want to start by asking, what is the cost of this in philanthropy?
Yeah, the cost is tremendous when someone gives, when they trust, when they believe the words that we share, and then what we said, promised so genuinely, so fervently, doesn't happen. You can imagine what that feels like. You can imagine how people's hopes were built up about making a difference, about finding a trusted partner, and then watching that slip away, right? Or in the case of Epstein, to find that organization that you believed in that would hold itself to high ideals is kind of slumming around, just looking for easy cash. That's also disconcerting. So we remember one of the precepts we talked about in another series, Susan. It begins with donors wanting to believe in organizations and in leaders that they're of high standards, of high principle, and they will see whatever they say they will do, they will see it through. If I could give you a quick example of where we fall short and how it's plagued a particular organization, take higher education and this notion of an endowed chair. For those of you who don't know that, don't worry. It's a way a donor can fund a very prominent thought leader at a university. So you say, give us an endowed chair, endow that chair, and we'll go recruit the best person in the world in this discipline, and your name will be attached to that person and all the good work they do. Well, imagine how alluring that is. But then look at the history of endowed chairs in 10 years and why that concept became less and less attractive. What we didn't tell donors is, well, we may not be able to recruit as dazzling a person as we think we might. They didn't tell donors it could take 2 or 3 years to recruit that person. So they took their money, said it was urgent that they must have it, took their money, and then didn't communicate that these searches were going ongoing and taking much longer. And then sadly, in many cases, after 3 or 4 years, they announced, guess what? We weren't able to find this, or let me rephrase it. What they said is, we looked the world over and decided good old Sam, who's been with us for the last 25 years, is really the best in the business.
Wow.
Can you imagine how the donor feels? And that scenario played out over and over again. Endowed chairs are far less attractive as a giving option than they were, but we could restore that if we took those lessons and said, careful about what you promise, let people
Mm.
know what the downsides are, keep them posted throughout, but certainly don't back away from the promise without going back to the donor and saying, would you be okay with this decision, right? So we took a scintillating giving option and just kind of made people now start to question, is that real? Is that right? Can I trust that? That's just one example. I don't think people are ill-intentioned. I think we get a little glib in making fundraising promises, and we get a little caught up in meeting fundraising targets and forget the real work is done when the money hits the books.
Jim, my heart is slowing a bit here. I'm listening. I have a surprised look on my face. You would think that higher ed, the major institutions of our time, would be more pristine. I think there's several things going on, the breakdown of systems today as we know it. But you said for a decade or more. The words, I went to look back at it, the words are, "We pledge transparency." From the time your funds hit our books until they were applied for the purposes to which we agreed. And Jim, I realized I was listening as you were speaking, and I thought, gosh, if this pledge form is signed, it's so simple. I'm going to pull it up right here so people can see. It's one page. It starts before we ask, here is what we pledge. It's one page. The ideals are clear. And it might be something that I can keep on my desk, especially if I'm the executive, the president, or whatever the department head, that I can see these words and the words can become real. I think you said, I don't think we're perhaps looking at malicious, unethical, intended behavior. I think maybe it has to do with stressed, overwhelmed,
Yes.
over ambitious behavior. But if
Yes.
we keep the word transparency front and center, maybe that will smooth the way a bit.
Yes. And we've all had that example, I think, in our career where one, maybe early in life, we made a mistake and we didn't own up to it. And then it compounded by the time we fessed up to it. And then we learned from it. And then we went to a donor and said, either we or I or the organization made a mistake. 99 times out of 100, what does the donor say? Well, okay, that's human. Thank you for letting me know. But you preserved trust in the process. So it isn't like you have to be perfect, but you do have to let them know if something you said could be starts to falter, let them know as soon as possible. Preserve that trust, and that funding potentially is still there, could be redirected, or who knows what.
Jim, this discussion, these videos per se are intended to be brief, but I would like to just take a minute to get a little granular on the practices and the commitments, talking about personalized accounting, talking about protocols, that kind of thing. What might you share a bit here in terms of getting a little bit granular here on how to do this?
Yes, so we're now talking about, we started talking just about sort of the basics, didn't we, Susan? That these are basic obligations. Now imagine if we can be more proactive and more positive about this, where we can then actually allow somebody to see who is working with the funds, what they're trying to do, the experiments that they're running, the activity that they're a part of, right? Bring them in so that the donor can see in whom they've invested, how dedicated that person is. And then, of course, in the next segment, we'll talk about impact. But I think what people want are partners. Remember, you and I know this in our bones, people give to people. So as soon as you can, when the funds are received, who did the money go to? And we want you to know this is the person on task who's trying to live this out and will be accountable to you. So one of the most important things we have to do, most important things, is to get nonprofits to realize stewardship is not an office and advancement. It's an institutional ethic. And anybody who receives private funds is accountable back to the donor personally. And watch what happens in the rebuilding of trust and the renewing of confidence in philanthropic giving.
Wow, this is so good. It's so deep. And early on in the series, I think I said every conversation with Jim is like a master class, and that's the way I'm feeling right now. I am not going to go deep with you right now because you do offer an opportunity for people to do that. I am delighted by this package that you've created called A Day with Jim. And I'm sitting here thinking about people who, come to you in person, spend a day with you, and they get to go deep on these things. Is that your idea about A Day with Jim?
That's exactly it, Susan. I had so many people writing and asking for my opinion, or an hour here, an hour there, and I couldn't keep up with it. And I thought, yet the reason I became a consultant was to help as many good people and as many nonprofits as I could. So now I'm offering on site in Bethesda, Maryland, a short metro ride from downtown Washington, regular, all day, personal interactions that can be customized to each client, each organization, so that we can listen to them, what they're optimistic about, what they're struggling with, and help them develop personalized approaches that are specific to their organization, their history, their environment, their culture. This is what you don't get even in well-intended big conferences and big books. You get broad advice. Some of it is great, some of it's brilliant, some of it's wishy-washy. But what you really want to do is be able to sit down and listen to exactly where someone is given that organizational history and say, this might be the 3 or 4 best ways forward given where you are. So that's what we want to do. Personalized, customized advice one day, and we think it can be a turning point for many people and many organizations.
Well, I'm spending 15 minutes with you, and it's a turning point for me. So I can say for sure that I would encourage anyone to do this. Thank you for this conversation. Next time will be our last video discussion in this series. It will be on the topic pledging to demonstrate impact. This is important, and I really can't wait to discuss it. So I'll see you then, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.